Welcome to another MMORPG devlog. In the last video, we finished the server, so it's working here, and we can even put some methods to try to figure out what's going on in the server. And we can list connections. So I have no connections here, but I can literally use a client to connect and start sending messages. And if I list connections, here you go, I have a connection. I can do it again with another client. And if I list it again, I have two connections. And when my client disconnects, you can see that if I list again, there's only one connection left. In other words, we literally finished everything that we needed to do to the server to handle the clients. But now, the next step, and it's a very important step, trust me, let me quit this server here real quick. And the next step is that we need to handle the message that the client sends to the server, because right now we are not sending anything, we are not handling anything. So here in the client.py I have like a socket that is literally sending messages, but the server is doing nothing. And by the way, yes, we need to handle to create a proper client class. We're gonna do that later on, but today what we need to do is to handle any kind of message that the client sends to the server, because if you remember correctly, we already have a list of all the possible messages here that we can send to the server, and we also have the flow of the messages, so everything that the user and the server needs to know about sending and receiving messages. So we need to transpose that to the script. And by the way, some people asked me for this document, so he can read and stuff like that, and yes, I have no problem sharing that. So ping me in the Discord server, and by the way, link in the description, if you want to have access to this, and I'll send you the link, no problem, okay? And by the way, this is an MMO series, and for those who don't know, I'm doing almost daily devlogs, so subscribe to this channel if you're not, to not miss any devlog. So anyways, let's start writing some code here, okay? So the first thing that we need to change here is that right now in the client handle, I'm here with the class client handle, in the run method, it receives the message. So here's where he receives the message, and right now he does nothing. He just send a log to the terminal of the server saying, hey, the client sent a new message, okay? So I will keep this for now because it's important for us to debug this. And if you remember correctly, we can run the terminal, and there's a message here called show logs. They're gonna show the logs, okay? So we're gonna keep that for now because it's important for us to debug, but we need to process the message. And what I'm gonna do is to create a new method, and I'm gonna put some weird stuff here just to separate my stuff, and I'm gonna call it process message. And it's gonna receive the message itself in bytes, and it's gonna receive like a flag saying that this doesn't matter like at all, but I like that, so I'm gonna make a flag to explain if this message is TCP or UDP. Again, we don't have anything UDP right now, but we're gonna have eventually, okay? So that's why I'm anticipating that. So this is called every time the server receives a message, something from the client, okay? We don't need to worry about that. Let me put some documentation here. And we need to call the process message here when we actually receive a message. So I will keep the log for now, but I'm gonna do self.process message, and I'm gonna pass the message. And it's TCP here, so I'm not gonna bother with this argument here, okay? And what we can do here in the process message is we're gonna start reading the message starting from the header. But what is very important for us to do, let me actually copy the message here, is to pass all those headers here, because we have a lot of headers, to the server, to the code actually. So it's gonna be easier for us to say, hey, this message is like a message sent, so this is the payload that we need to read, okay? So it's important for us to have this kind of stuff here in this in the code. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a new file here inside the MMO, and I'm gonna call it common.py. Common is literally like the common stuff that you have in both cases. And why I kept putting this in the wrong folder? I don't want. Here we go. So I have like a common inside my my project, and I can include that everywhere, including my client handle. So here, I'm gonna do import dot, I don't remember how to do that in Python. Okay, I think it's like this, that you import like a package from a previous folder in Python. I honestly don't remember, folks. I really don't remember. I think we can do like, I can put 3 points here or 2 points. I think this, you're gonna work. No, yes. Oh yes, this works. No. But again, I'll leave in the comments how to do that. I don't remember. But I went ahead as well and paused the video and typed everything here in the command. So yes, you're not gonna have to watch everything here. So here is basically all the headers that we defined previously. And if you have no idea what is this, it's because you missed the previous video, because we described that, and that's why I'm not gonna describe it again. But we have a bunch of headers here, and every header you're gonna have like a 2 byte size. So we're gonna specify 2 bytes for the header, and we can define the headers here and define the file, the byte, like the number of that specific header. I'm using like just a normal decimal counter. You can put everything you want. It's like a byte, so you can put like after 9, you can put A and go hexadecimal. Oh, it doesn't matter, okay? But I'm just defining the header, the common header here, okay? And I also went ahead and created 4 functions to help us in this process data, because it's going to be very important, and you're going to understand why in a second. But the first thing is that we need a way to convert like an integer to a byte. So I did that here into bytes, so we can pass an integer here and the size in bytes that we want, and it's gonna convert to bytes. And the opposite way is also true, bytes to int, so we can convert from a byte to an integer, because remember, in the message, in the communication between the server and the client, we only support bytes, okay? That's why we need this conversion. And I also have like a 2 bytes that we're gonna send convert a message, a string message to a byte. And we also have a pop byte. I'm gonna explain in a second what is this pop byte. And also, it may be a great idea to have the same thing here that you're gonna that we can use like for floating numbers. I think it's a great idea. And I went ahead and did a bit of a hack here as well. This is very bad, but like converting a float to bytes in Python, at least for now I remember, it's a little bit annoying. You need to use like a struct, and I'm gonna keep it simple and just transform this float in a weird way to an integer, and then transform it back using this like multiplication and division here with a large number to just shift the floating point left or right, okay? So this is weird. Don't do that at home. Let me put a warning here. Don't do this. Low. But again, it's a placeholder. We can change that later, but don't over-engineer stuff, okay? Keep it simple and do stuff that you know how to do, how it works, and because you're gonna thank me later. So this is very simple, and we can, now that we have a bunch of headers, we can literally start doing the process message. So here you can see that I created a copy of my message. This is like a string, actually a bunch of bytes, and I copied everything using this notation in Python to a data. And the first thing that we need to do is to check the first 2 bytes of the message to see the header. Like the header, let's say that the first 2 bytes is a hello and stuff like that. The naive approach is to just do if data and the first 2 bytes equals to header, common dot header, hello, I'm sorry. Then we're gonna do something. This is the naive approach, okay? And no camel case, please. Here you go. But all this have a bunch of problems, like a lot of problems. And the first one is that now we're gonna have to keep doing this hacky approach everywhere until the end of the message, because well, the first 2 bytes it's okay to do this, but then if you recall correctly, you can see that we have like a logging that have a bunch more arguments, a bunch more stuff that we need to handle. So if you do like the login, let's say that this message is a login, then we need to have the username size, and then oops, we were probably gonna do use size that are gonna be data starting from the second and going to the fourth. And again, this is a nightmare. It's gonna become a nightmare very fast. And the second problem, and this is the very important one, is that this message, it's not necessarily one package. It can be like a bunch. I don't know if package is the correct name, but the question is, like, the user can send to the client one message and then he can send another message. So let's say that the user sends hello, and then he immediately sends for some weird, again, it's an example, okay? So let me hack this. Let's say the user say hello and it immediately say validate out, just for example, okay? The question is, it's not a guarantee that when you receive a message here in the com.recv, that you will only receive one of those messages. You can receive one, or you can receive more than one. You can receive like both hello and validate out in the same like byte, okay, in the same byte array. So you need to take that into consideration. You need to process all the messages inside in a while loop. Because again, this can be one single message, then it's okay to do this, but it can be more than one message, and then it's not okay to do this because you will only process the first message, and that's not what you want. So that's why we're gonna do something different. We're gonna create a while loop. So while data, in other words, while we have a data here to process, we're gonna retrieve the header of this message, and that's why I created the pop bytes in the common. And again, that's why I'm gonna explain here. Pop bytes, you're gonna receive a data in bytes, and how many bytes you want to remove from that data, okay? And if you pay attention here, it's gonna return the prefix that he just popped and the rest of the message. So it's safe for us to retrieve the header and the data, the rest of the data, by doing common .pop bytes, and then I'm gonna pass the data and 2 bytes, because again, 2 bytes is what we want, like how many bytes we want to pop. So now we can have the header, and with this header in hand, we can start processing every message that we receive. So that's good, okay? Something that it's a little bit annoying for me is that I don't want to type common, so I'm gonna do from common import all. It doesn't matter. It's good for me, okay? And now, what I'm gonna do, the next step is I'm gonna have to check if this header, and again, I don't need the common now, is something. For example, let's say that if this header is a hello and stuff like that. No, I think it's good to have the common. I'm confusing here. I'm confused here. Import common. Okay. And if the header is a hello, I'm gonna do the appropriate stuff that we already defined here in the login flow. So the client sends hello, the server gonna need to interpret that, and I'm gonna need to send it again, the validate in message, okay? So this is a boring step. I'm probably gonna hush here and do all the rest in a time lapse, but first, let me answer the client, because the hello is a pretty simple message because there's no payload in the hello. So if you go ahead here, no payload. So in other words, if I read a hello message here, header, I don't need to read anything else, okay? It's okay. I can literally finish my stuff here and do other stuff. And if you go ahead in the login flow, once the client sends hello, the server gonna return with validate in, okay? Very simple here. So with a random string to validate. But for now, I will only send validating and empty stuff. Why? Because we need to have another function here in the client handle called send message, because we need to send message to the client. So this is exactly what I'm going to do right now. So we're going to create a definition, send message. I'm going to receive self and a message in bytes. Okay, and what this is going to do is, of course, send a message to the client. Sends a message to the client. Here we go. And it's very simple, self.connection.send all. Oops. And we pass the message, just like that. Okay, so every time you want to send a message to the client, you just need to do this. Okay, I'm not sure if you need like a thread lock here, if you need a mutex here. Some people pointed out in the comment that most of my mutex is not like really necessary because Python already have the GEO, the global interpreter lock, and I kind of agree, but I'm just not sure. So leave in the comments what you think. But I don't think we need the GEO here to send a message. Anyways, this is basically the procedure. For example, if the header is hello, we're gonna send back a message to the client. So self.sendMessage that we literally say common.validate in. Okay. Of course, we need to send a random string. If you go ahead here in the message description, the validate in, you're gonna send 16 bytes of the with a encrypted random string. We can do that. We already have like this 2 bytes here that are gonna receive a message and the size. So let's do that actually. So we're gonna send a message. Here we go. Plus common.2 bytes, and I will do like 16. Let me just put a bunch of underscores, not underscores, a bunch of this, and I'm gonna do 16. Here we go. So this is gonna be enough. I'm pretty sure that this is a Python notation, right? Yes, it is. So I'm creating like a 16 not random string here and sending to the validating. And this is just a hint for you to see, to figure out how this is going to end up, because this is basically what you're going to do here. And again, I need to do this for every message here. And of course, I only need to expect in the server, because the client handler, if you remember correctly, is something that is inside the server. I only have to expect message coming from the client. In other words, I don't need to have a branch saying validate in. Okay, I only need a validate out. This is important. So what you're gonna do here, an elif header equals to common.validate out, and then I'm gonna do stuff. Okay, so I need to copy and paste everything here and do something on it. And again, in the next video, probably we're gonna do the opposite side. We're gonna have, we need to create like a proper client, because right now this is not a client. This is like just not a client. And we need to do that. But for now, in this video, I'm gonna do everything in the client side here, in the client handle. Okay, very simple, and then we're gonna evolve. And again, I know that someone is going to point that in the comments saying, hey, Guilherme, this is bad. Just use like a proper like object orientation. Don't do a bunch of if, and stuff like that. Honestly, in this case, I don't care, because this is the only place that you're going to have to validate those messages. I'm not going to have to validate those messages anywhere else. So it's good. Okay, so I'm going to time lapse it, and I'm going to put everything for all the messages right here, right now. Okay, it took me a while, but it's here. And I have a huge while loop with a bunch of if and elifs. And I know, again, it's bad, but it's good. And what I did here is basically I have the MMO plan in one monitor here, and I was like reading, oh, here's a client and here's a payload. And then what I'm gonna do is go ahead and so actually here's the header and here's the payload. So for the header, there's no payload. Good. So I go ahead here in the header, hello, and then I'm gonna read the payload. This was the one that we did like live here, but the validate out, no, let me jump to a more complex, the client position. So I went ahead here in the client position, so it's like here's the client position. And it's a message from the client. That's why I'm considering it, because if it was not, I was not considering. And I would look and say, okay, here's the payload, ID size, okay, and the user ID, the first thing that we did. And then I grabbed the ID, okay. So I popped a bunch of bytes, 4 bytes to be more precise, because it's the ID size, and it's 4. and we can literally keep going here. So again, 12 bytes with the XYZ user position, float 4 bytes each, and then I go ahead here and X, Y, and Z, and I pop 4 bytes for every float, I'm sorry, and then I convert everything from bytes to float using this method that we created. Like a bit of hard-coded, but again, it's working, okay? So this is basically what I'm doing, and that's why it's very important when you do a project like that to have a plan, because, well, if you look here and say, okay, what is this? This is like black magic, this is a bunch of stuff going on and I don't understand. Well, it's not, because I'm basically having every message and reading the payload that we defined it here. That's why it was very important to spend a lot of time doing this planning here, doing these Excel tables and stuff like that, because now it's a piece of cake. And by the way, I forgot to include the ID size. I should include that in the common. I also put a bunch of stuff. Oops, I forgot this. I created so these methods to convert a string to bytes and bytes to string. And basically, because if you remember from the previous video, almost every time actually, we send a message that is a string, we first send 2 bytes with the message size, with the string size, and then the string itself. And to read and to write that, it's better to have a function. So I created a string to bytes that are going to do exactly that and receive a string and return the payload in bytes, and the opposite way as well. It receives like the whole data and it reads from it. And I also created like a pop string because it makes more sense. The API is the same. Okay, let me put the ID size here. I forgot about that. Goes to 4, and sometime in the code I read the ID, so it's better to have like common.id size, because again, as I said, if you want to change the ID size, we can do it. So let me change this real quick. And again, it's a little bit boring, but it's necessary, okay, to have this this server working. And if you see here, I'm only reading the data. I'm not doing anything with the data at all, except for the hello, because I'm doing this test message just to explain to you. But every other message, I'm not doing it, okay? Because if you go ahead here in the communication flow, you're gonna see that when the server receives a certain message, it's gonna return certain stuff or do certain stuff. For example, the send message, like message send, when the client says, hey, message sent, right now, what I did here, so here's the message sent. And if I go to the message description, I have here the message sent somewhere. Here we go. That you're going to receive basically a string, 2 bytes to the message size and the message itself. And I went ahead here in the message sent and read that string, that message. But I'm not doing anything. I'm not sending the message. This is the next step, okay? First of all, we need to process the data. Then we need to actually do stuff with the data, okay? But in this video, we basically did a lot of stuff. We wrote like a bazillion lines of code. It's a lot, like almost 100 lines of code in this common.py, and probably more than 100 lines of code. No, almost 100 lines of code as well here in the client handle. So in the next video, we're gonna go ahead and create a client itself, because, well, this is not a client. And then once we have the client doing the same thing, because again, we basically retrieved the client, the message sent from the client. But now in the client side, we need to do the opposite way to receive the message sent from the server, okay? So in the next video, we're gonna do that, and once we have both sides done, we'll finally be able to write the usability of that. Okay, so that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you're not subscribed to this channel, please subscribe. The next video will come up tomorrow, hopefully. If you have any questions or comments, leave in the comments and I'm gonna try to answer as fast as possible, and I see you tomorrow.